I can assure you the real Rob Picken will be in that fits this bill after I've spoken to you guys about milk for 5 minutes. You think I'm kidding? So as Glenn has introduced very kindly, my name is Rob Picken, and I'm a global director here at Converge, and I'm lucky enough to be responsible for the FOM team who have managed to put this event on for you today. But my background is rich and varied. I started off life actually working, I'll tell you about how I properly started off my work life in just a moment, but I started off life working for a medical devices company in supply chain planning. And I was terrible at it. I got fired after 6 months, but that's another story for another day. So I then found myself in a data company called IHS. And I then found myself after that in a data company called Silicon Expert. And after that, I found myself here at Converge. And the different hats that I had to wear at these different times taught me a lot about information, informatics, data analytics, mistakes that people make. So a lot of the stuff that we've heard from San and Stephanie, really it hit me in a visceral way, because I've lived through trying to tell salespeople not to do stupid things with data. I've tried to live through helping people, San, to go from this top level where you have a problem and not just saying just buy the stuff, because you have to say, well, you've got too much. You now have to actually buy a warehouse to put it all in. You can't just keep doing last time buys. So I find myself in Converge, and after listening to the supply chain security people this morning and the data analytics people this afternoon, I find myself thinking, well, what can I offer you guys that you can actually action tomorrow that makes a difference to your jobs? Because all of the supply chain security information is fantastic, but it requires either a huge investment intellectually or financially or in time from an entire organization to make differences to the way they handle their supply chains. The information from the data analytics people this afternoon, it's all good information. It's killer if you're trying to change the way you handle information. But again, it requires a systematic change in the way your company handles information or looks at market intelligence or processes the data. So what can I do for you? Well, with these different hats that I wear from the supply chain or from suppliers or customers or looking at obsolescence or data, what I'd like to do is teach you to ask better questions and make better decisions. But I wasn't joking. I want to talk to you about milk first. Sorry, Stanley. So my first job out of university, I was working in a supermarket, and I was working night shift because, well, I'm a data geek, and no one really wants to hang around with data geeks in the daytime, so you might as well go out and make some money. So I started working at a supermarket, and the other reason I was there is because I did a history degree at college, and it's basically the only job I was qualified for. So I was working in this supermarket, and this lady comes in one evening, and she tries to buy some milk. And by evening, I mean 2 a.m. And so she's trying to buy this milk, and it's not going through the scanner, and I can't work out why. And it turns out that it's from the wrong superstore. So I worked in this superstore called Tesco, and the milk was from a superstore called Waitrose. And my boss just starts freaking out. My supervisors, I'm 21, my supervisor's 22. You know how it works. Why have we got the wrong milk? How has this happened? What's going on? Who's responsible? But these questions didn't help us to solve the problem. It doesn't matter why we've got the wrong milk. We just kind of have it. So while he's going nuts and phoning up his boss, trying to work out what's gone wrong, me and the other guy I'm working with are saying, well, this supermarket's like a mile down the road, and it's not a big store. We could just put it all in my car and drive down there. But phone them first. Have you got our milk? Yeah. Have you got ours? Yeah. Okay, so what do? We put it in the car, drive down the road, and we solve the problem. All the while that we're doing this, my supervisor is still going nuts, asking the wrong questions. Does this sound familiar to anybody in supply chain management in the room? You guys are getting stuff done, and your boss is still going crazy asking the wrong questions, right? So this is in all walks of life, in all levels of seniority, and it happens all the time. So while we're talking about this, trying to make better decisions and asking better questions, it's something you have to try and look at in your day-to-day life as well. So really the problem was that the commodity is exactly the same. You're looking at, everyone knows what milk is, what it tastes like, what happens if you boil it for too long. It makes the microwave stink. It's awful. But the barcode is just data, and the machine reads the data. But the point about the barcode is that unless you have the fundamental information, your machine can't understand what it's supposed to. The commodity is exactly the same. But if your machine doesn't know what it is, you can't do anything with it. Now, does this sound familiar for anything else that we see on a daily basis? If your bill of materials goes somewhere else, it might be your supply chain partner that you've known for 20 years. But if they haven't got the data about your commodities, it doesn't matter how complete your bill of materials is, because they can't take action from it. They can't do anything. And actually, this isn't malice from you guys. It's not ignorance or it's not apathy. It's just the fact that you're asking the wrong questions, and actually the information that's in here is based on preconceptions. And it's the preconception that everyone you communicate with about your bill of materials or about your components knows what you're talking about, will react in the same way, and knows what you would like them to do. So it's not malice, it's not ignorance, it's not apathy, it's just a preconception. So let's look at how to ask the first better question. How can we get rid of preconceptions? So I was speaking with a couple of the guys from Arrow, and of course, Arrow has a ton of suppliers on their list that they're franchised for. And one of the questions that came up, I was going to try and make you guys use the app, but it didn't work earlier, so we'll do a show of hands. I was talking to the guys at Arrow, and they're saying, really surprising information that comes out. Manufacturers sometimes put things on data sheets that never get produced. So I'm going to have a quick quiz, a quick show of hands. I know it's late in the day, it's after lunch, the guys are asleep in the back, and nudge them, wake them up. This is fun, I promise. What percentage of NPI parts from major manufacturers are never sold in the supply chain? Have a think for a minute. So let's have a show of hands for A. B? C? All right, guys, if you said B or C, you're crazy people. Like, why would manufacturers put something on a data sheet if they never want to sell it? They'd go out of business really quickly. I mean, I was speaking with our data analytics guys in Form within Converge, and they think around 25% of the obsolete parts that we see on recs from customers, so not theoretical parts, not bills of materials that exist on Excel data sheets, nothing like that. Actual parts that people want to buy, about 25%. We've never seen them before, ever. It's the first time that you guys are asking for them. But if you think manufacturers are pushing out 25, 30% of their bills of materials that never get bought, you're crazy. What's the actual answer? Some manufacturers are producing so many theoretical permutations of resistors, capacitors, MOSFETs, diodes, that they will never be bought in the marketplace. So your preconception that manufacturers are only producing stuff you want to buy, or that the person next to you wants to buy, or the person in Europe wants to buy, that's a really dangerous preconception, because the information that's missing, Sean mentioned it earlier, and San mentioned it earlier. What if the parts that you're designing in, nobody else is? What if you are the only marketplace, and I don't care how big your company is, what if you're the only marketplace for those components? Not only is it a problem for long-term support from the manufacturer, it's a problem for you when the manufacturer eventually stops producing them, and you then have to go to the open market, because you can guarantee the only parts you can buy aren't genuine. They're blacktop. They've come from somewhere they probably shouldn't have done. So the problem there is the preconception that you have is forcing you to make poor decisions. And again, it's not malice that's making you do this, it's experience. Well, sure, the manufacturers are always going to produce the parts, we're fine. But if you have an obsolete component, should it be poor old Ron here that you beat up every time? He says no, so no. Okay, so it shouldn't be. So always challenge assumptions, never make preconceptions. The next thing to talk about, really, the next question that you can ask to be more effective is to seek wider data points if you want to confirm a preconception or confirm a suspicion. So what this is data from Silicon Expert. You've heard them mentioned a few times today. The guys are over here in the back of the room. Hi, guys. I still miss you all. But what they've done is compiled information from years and years and years, and in their blog, you can go back 5 years and find the information about the percent of components which go obsolete without a PCN in the marketplace every year. So from this information, from the percent of components that go obsolete, can I make a decision about how much risk there is in my supply chain? Can I? Yes? No, you can't. That's a preconception. If I just look at this information, this is a percent of components that have gone obsolete over the last 5 years. And you can see in 2016, almost 50% of parts that went obsolete without a PCN. So that's a huge risk. But relative to other years, is there a trend here? Is this something else that I can see? So if we actually look at the next information that appears, this is the overall number of components that went obsolete in that year. And you can see, 2016, it had an enormous number. Absolutely enormous. Sorry, it had an enormous percentage, but the number of components was relatively small compared to other years, just 300,000 components. So is this enough information to assess my risk? No, not yet. You're learning. You're shaking your head this time, not nodding. It's good. Challenge preconceptions. We're learning something. So if I then remove that 48% or the 36% from 2017, or the 42% from 2013. I then get the actual number of parts that are affected. Is this enough information to assess my risk? You may have guessed the answer by now. No, it's not. So what happens if I then think, well, the stuff we've just learned about manufacturers making parts that no one ever buys, what if I remove the 70% of parts anyway? So these manufacturers might just be obsoleting vaporware. So what does that mean? Can I now make an assessment? Well, in this case, the actual number of components drops pretty rapidly. But is that enough information? Are manufacturers just not producing anything? Are they not replacing components? Is the information meaning that our market is declining in size? Or was 2017 the biggest ever market for components, over $400 billion worth of semiconductor sales? So what do I need to see if it affects my marketplace? Is there a fit form function drop-in alternative that I can use instead? And you know what? I don't know the answer to this. And unless you guys look into your own supply chains and into your own design cycles, you don't know the answers either. And I guarantee your engineers don't know the answer either. And that's actually okay. And the reason it's okay is because it forces you to go and ask more questions. You have to ask your team the question. You have to ask the suppliers the questions. Am I the only person using this? Are you going to buy a new yacht because you've sold me this turkey that nobody else wants to buy and it's going obsolete next year? No, sure, it's fine. Just buy 10 more of them, I'll get 2 yachts. But these are the points. It's not ignorance, it's not malice. It's preconceptions, and it's the fact that we don't ask enough questions more widely to back up our data points. So what else can we do next? One thing I'd like to talk about next, and it's really the biggest idea, and it's a challenge to get it across, I have about 10 minutes left, is if I look at the opposite side of a coin, if I read the opposite of a headline, do I draw the right conclusion and does it make me happy? So here's a headline. Donald Trump celebrates second year in office. Right? That might make you happy. He's been in office for 2 years. But if I think the opposite side of the headline is he's got 6 more years left, then actually that's a bad thing. No, it's just 2, 6 more years. So you see, depending on your viewpoint and depending on the opposite side of the headline, it can be a different story. Incidentally, we'd love you to make America Great Britain again and come back to us. We would flip Brexit around. You would not be the 51st state. You could be the new Wales. It'd be wonderful. New England. There we go. So before I get into talking about asking the opposite headlines, I need to develop the idea to get you guys seeking more data points and challenging preconceptions. So this is a chart that tracks global semiconductor sales against the number of components reported as counterfeit to an organization called ERAI. Now, we heard about them earlier, so I won't go into what the acronym means, but it's an organization run by Mark and Crystal Snyder. If you'd like more information on them, this chart is used very kindly by their permission. They know it's here. They know we're talking about it today. Ask them about it. They'd love to hear from you guys. And what you can see is that as global semiconductor sales go up, and that's the yellow line that goes across the screen, as the semiconductor sales go up, counterfeit components reported goes up. As the line comes down again, what happens to the counterfeit reports? They go, come on, guys, it's late in the day. They go, correct, good stuff. That's the preconception I'll allow you. But if we start to look at actually what's happening here, there's some outliers, there's some spikes. The first spike is in 2011, and Henry, you've ruined the surprise. What happens in 2011? Why is there a big spike?
We had a lot of folks who were forced to report things they didn't want to talk about.
Correct. So to paraphrase what Henry's just said, it's confirmation bias. If you start to look for something, you will find it. If you have kids and you wonder where dinner's gone and it's not on the floor, it's not all over them, it's either in the dog or it's behind the sofa. If you look for it, you're going to find it. And you probably aren't going to be happy with what you find. So the big spike in 2011 in counterfeits is genuine. These parts are actually reported. But it's confirmation bias. This is something that's a freak that happens in the market. And you can see thereafter the line comes down again, things sort themselves out. The other outlier that I want you to start thinking about is what happens in 2017. What happens to the yellow line? Where does it go? Way up. Way up. This is the first year that the global semiconductor market's been worth more than $400 billion. That's an astronomical amount. What happens to the number of reported counterfeits through ERAI? Goes up? Right, it goes through the roof. No, it doesn't. Hang on, it halves. Why is it going? No, it doesn't quite halve. Why is it going? No, it doesn't quite half, but it goes down remarkably. Why does this happen? Well, nobody knows. We can't answer this question. We don't have enough information. We can't answer the question. So never assume that just because something's happened in the past, it's going to happen again in the future. Never make that assumption, and always look for more data points. So if I'm looking for more data points about this information, where can I go? Everyone's heard of GuideUp after today, Government Industry Data Exchange Program. It's been discussed a couple of times. Does their information agree with what we've just discussed from ERAI? Well, absolutely it does. And what happens with the trend line? So that information is trending down remarkably. And does it mean that after 2011, counterfeiters packed their bags up and said, oh, they're onto us, guys, we better get out of here? No, of course it doesn't mean that. Of course it doesn't. Does this also mean that companies immediately got better at assessing counterfeits and looking at their supply chain? Probably not. Does it mean counterfeits have gone away? Probably not. Does this mean that reporting became so onerous on both the reporter and the reportee that it became something they were scared of doing through the government? Because we just saw on the previous slide that the ERA numbers go up and up and up. So always look for more information, always look for more data. So now we're in a position to talk about the opposite headline. Does it make me happy or not? So if I look at a report that I read this year, it's been produced by the Department of Defense. And this looks specifically at Operation Chain Reaction. Operation Chain Reaction, for those of you, has anyone heard of this, by the way? One, because you guys are on the committee, good. That's cheating. So Operation Chain Reaction, for those of you who don't know, is a US Department of Defense activity, which is backed up by around 16 different government bodies, the DLA, of course the DoD, the FBI, the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, and they're all invested in trying to get counterfeit components out of the DoD supply chain, because your Department of Defense, your government, is the biggest buyer of goods and services on the planet. So now we can talk about the opposite headlines. So we can see here from Operation Chain Reaction that between the years 2014 and 2017, they took out $19 million of counterfeit components, goods, services, proceeds, cash, bags stuffed full of money on a plane to China, took it out of circulation. That's fantastic news. 19 million bucks, 33 arrests, 34 prosecutions. That's fantastic news. So why am I not smiling? It's not because I'm English that I'm not smiling. It would hurt. But why is this not a good headline? Well, it would be a good headline if we knew that the counterfeit trade into the Department of Defense totaled $20 million and there was 35 people involved in it. Great, we've got $19 million off the streets and we've arrested 33 of these 35 nefarious, awful cartoon villains. Fantastic, but that's not the case. So I spoke with Imix Group to have a look at the amount of information we can find for this. But before I did that, I looked at another slide in the same slide deck. And this is a guy from Navarre, and Robin, you might know this guy. Robert P. Ernst, you can see at the top, and like Ron, I'll provide all the sources after the presentation. He estimates that around 15% of all components for spares, repair, maintenance, and overhaul on the shelves in the Pentagon or Pentagon subcontractors could be counterfeit. Okay, so that's 15% of the stuff that they're buying. Well, how much are they buying? So between the years 2014 and 2017, the DoD spent about $600 billion a year. And if we take out platform procurement, we take out personnel, we talk about other maintenance and the like, the number that they specify for procurement, specifically for stuff, is about $100 billion a year. So let's be really conservative. The wider information, the context, let's say they spend 0.1% of that $100 billion a year just on electronics. Just on electronics. That gives us $100 million bucks a year. So over the course of those 4 years, that's $400 million. Let's say 15% of that is counterfeit. That's $60 million worth of components. So now that I've got the wider information, that I'm challenging the assumption, and I'm trying to use that information to make is the opposite headline going to make me happy? $19 million of arrests and out of circulation is great, but it means there's another 41 million bucks as a minimum that could have made its way into the supply chain during that time. This is all public information. I wish I was making this up. It'll make you happy in a minute, by the way, to realize no one else is in a better boat. I was in a UK Ministry of Defense conference a couple of weeks ago, and we had an incredible talk from a guy there who works in Customs and Border Protection in the UK. And these people are incredible at getting Gucci handbags and cheap Rolexes off the street. It's a scourge of our nation. It's crippling the economy. It's awful. And we're very grateful for their service. But I was talking to the guy. Do you want to know the number of arrests that they've made and the dollar value of counterfeit electronic components they've taken off the street in the last 20 years? If anyone can guess this, you get absolutely nothing except my admiration. What's the dollar value? Bingo. They've taken nothing off the streets. They've made no arrests. They have no leads. Absolutely none. It's not just because of Brexit. It's not all coming from France. We don't know where it's coming from. But it doesn't mean we don't have a problem. It means we have to ask more questions about why we don't understand how big the problem is. So as a further thought to leave you with, I'm not suggesting that the counterfeit components that report through ERAI and GuideUp is the size of the problem. It's up to you guys to go and ask more questions. Ron mentioned earlier there's a huge number of counterfeits that get sent back to the original manufacturers. This chart shows you, this is a Department of Defense study from 2009, but I also have information from an AIA study from 2011 that shows an incremental increase to a phenomenal number of components reported back to manufacturers, over 8,000 by 2008. This amount of information that's available to you is huge. And if you don't ask the right questions, it's just data. San and Stephanie and anyone involved in data will tell you that data on its own is largely useless. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't mean anything. You need to be able to convert that data into actionable insight that means something to your company. Just because we can convert it into something that means something to us doesn't mean it's any use to you guys. You have to be able to ask the questions and challenge the assumptions and flip the headlines around to see if it means something to you. So I'm going to leave you with 3 thoughts before you all jump off the roof outside and wonder how on earth our service personnel are still alive with $60 million worth of counterfeits going into their supply chains. You must always challenge assumptions. Never assume that just because somebody tells you something, no matter how much you trust them, that it is the truth. Seek and use relevant data to make your own decisions upon. And if someone can't give you the information, go and ask somebody else. You should have learned today from the community that there are dozens and dozens and dozens of companies with great thinkers who are happy to help you and provide you with their knowledge. Finally, use your community. There are, again, dozens of organizations out there. We're lucky enough to be joined by a few today. The US chapter of ION with Willie Brown and Jerry Liu is being formed as we speak. They're downstairs right now. ERAI is a great community. The G19 is a great community. Germany, you have COG over there. I know we have a colleague here from Austria. I can't see you right now. Wave if you're... There we go. One guy. You've been at COG in Germany before? Yeah, perfect. You know these guys. So really the message here is I don't want you to change the world. You can't boil the ocean. What I'd like you to do is change the way you look at the world. If you ask better questions, you will make better decisions because your worldview expands. And the real final thought is here that guys and girls in the room, you have phenomenal experience and phenomenal power for good to make change. But your experience is entirely focused in a single area and usually through a single company. You are an incredibly effective hammer, smashing the same nail time and time and time again. But what I would hope is that your community that you are now accessing in the last day and a half is the toolkit that lets you make better decisions by asking better questions. Thanks very much.
Questions for Rob?
If anyone else has got milk, I'm leaving.
You're also shy. Come on.
Not you, Willie. You
there we
ask
go.
actual questions.
It's an easy one. It's an easy one. So, did the lady wait around for you to return the milk and go get the right one?
I seem to remember, actually, we just sent her back to the shelf where there was another pallet and she got her milk. She was fine. She could make her tea. It was all okay. The police didn't need to be called.
Thank goodness. More questions for Rob? Right here, Lev.
Before Lev asks his question, by the way, guys, Lev is for the second year from Israel. He's made the flight all the way over, not just to see FOM, but it means a huge amount that we would have his presence here today. So, Lev, thank you.
You told about importance to ask correct questions. I think that it's not less important to get right answers.
Well, that's true, but I mean, so the question there was: is it more important to ask the right questions or get the right answers? Who's in a position to judge whether the answers are correct? Well, I'd actually say it's more nuanced than that, Lev. I'd say the answer is correct if it's in the right context. One of the things Stephanie brought up was, I think you said if the information is correct and current. There's actually 4 C's to data validation. Is it correct, is it current, is it consistent, and is it complete? If any one of those 4 is missing, then the information is useless. And the only people that can make the choice about whether the information is correct for their purposes is the person asking the question. But what I'm getting at is you must always ask for more sources and validate the data with another source if possible. That's why it has to be contextual. And just like the community, data is a living, breathing thing. Just because it's right today doesn't mean it's right tomorrow. You have to always be looking for more.
One more question for Rob? Well, I'll sort of posit something, and I'll ask you if you think this is a right interpretation, but it sounds to me that you're espousing the scientific method. Create hypothesis, then test hypothesis, then alter hypothesis with new knowledge.
Yeah, but I think you're right. It's interrogative questioning. The really important thing is kind of the first point I brought up. Never make assumptions. Just because something has always worked in a certain way, or you get trained in a new company that you join. I mean, some of us it was 20 years ago, some of us it was 20 weeks ago. Just because you've joined a company and someone says, no, that's always the way it's been done. You've got to call this girl, she's got the information. Challenge it. Why does it always have to be that way? And by the way, why is a really dangerous question to ask, particularly if you're new in a company and you don't want to get your ass fired. Because as soon as you ask a why question, it makes someone justify a position or defend a decision that they've made. But those are often the best questions to ask to get information out of people about what's going on with the organization. Why do we do it this way? It costs us a ton of money. You tell me I've got to do a last time buy, the warehouse is full. My CFO is going to scream at me and he'll fire me. So why has it always been done this way? Find out more, ask more questions.
Give it up for Rob Picken.